My son Vincent came to my house 3 weeks before his wedding and sat in my kitchen and told me with the careful delivery of someone who has rehearsed the words that I should not attend the ceremony. He said, "Mom, I love you. But Priscilla's family they're different from us. Her father made his first million before he was 30. Her mother did her degree at Oxford. The guest list is going to be full of people from a certain world, and I don't want anyone feeling uncomfortable." "Who would be uncomfortable?" I said. He looked at his hands. "You know how you are," he said. "The way you dress, the way you talk about things. You're not the way Priscilla's people expect. I am 64 years old. I have been in the restaurant business for 31 years. I know how to dress for any room and any occasion, because the restaurant business requires knowing how rooms and occasions work. I have sat across tables from city councilmen and venture capitalists and restaurant critics and food journalists from national publications, and I have sat across those tables in the clothes appropriate to those tables, and no one has ever found me out of place." I did not say any of this to Vincent. I was quiet for a moment, and then I said, "You'd like me to stay home on the day of your wedding?" "I'll make it worth your while," he said. He produced an envelope from his jacket. He put it on the table. "There's enough for a weekend trip somewhere. You could treat yourself. Spa, nice hotel, something nice." I looked at the envelope. It was a white envelope, business-sized, with a specific quality of something that has been prepared in advance because the conversation it belongs to has been planned rather than spontaneous. I picked up the envelope. I set it in the inside pocket of the cardigan I was wearing. I looked at my son across the kitchen table. "I'll think about it," I said. "The wedding is the 14th, he said. "At the Grand Pavilion, the DuPont Chen reception, 6 to midnight. He said this with the specific pride of someone who is pleased with what he has arranged, and the pride had a quality I recognized. It was the pride of a person who has pulled off something that represents a step upward and who wants the stepping up to be noted. I looked at him. "The Grand Pavilion," I said. "It's the best wedding venue in the city," he said. "We're in the Lafayette Hall, 240 guests. Priscilla's mother organized the caterer and the flowers." "I'm taking care of the venue, of course," I said. He left 20 minutes later. I sat at the kitchen table after he left, and I held the envelope in my hands. And I thought about the Grand Pavilion, which is the name I had given to the building in 2007, when I renovated the former hotel and converted it into the event and banquet facility that has been, for the past 16 years, the most sought-after wedding venue in the city. My name is Eleanor Marie DuPont Chen. I am 64 years old. My maiden name was Chen. When I married Victor DuPont in 1984, I became DuPont Chen, and when I established the company in 1993, I named it the DuPont Chen Hospitality Group, and the group's flagship property has been, since 2007, the Grand Pavilion. My son had booked his wedding reception at my building. He had given me money and told me to go away. I put the envelope on the counter. I made tea. I sat at the table and I thought about what to do. I want to tell you about the company before I tell you what I did, because the company is the foundation of the story, and because the company deserves more than a summary. I came to the restaurant business in 1993, at 33 years old, when most people who are going to make a career in the restaurant business have already been in it for a decade. I came to it late because my path to it was indirect. I had spent the preceding 8 years working in hotel management, first as a front desk supervisor, and then as a food and beverage manager, and then as a banquet coordinator at the Marquette Hotel in the city, and the banquet coordination had been the job that showed me what I was actually suited for. Banquet coordination is the management of large events in institutional settings, the weddings and corporate dinners and galas, and charity functions that require the specific combination of logistical precision and social intelligence that I had not known I had until I found myself doing it. I discovered in the Marquette's banquet rooms that I had an instinct for the way an event should feel. Not just how it should run logistically, but what the room should communicate to the people in it. What the lighting and the flowers table setting and the service choreography should produce in a person who is entering the room for the first time. The first property I established in 1993 was a 60-seat restaurant on Meridian Street that I called DuPont, and I ran it for 7 years before selling it to fund the acquisition of the Caledonian Hall, which I converted into the first dedicated banquet and event space in what would become the DuPont Chin Hospitality Group. The Caledonian Hall's success established the company's reputation in the event market, and the reputation led to the Park Street Dining Room and eventually to the Grand Pavilion. Each step had been funded by the success of the previous step, which is how you build a hospitality business without outside capital. The work produces the revenue funds the next thing. The company is entirely mine. The morality clause is mine to invoke. The judgment is mine to exercise. Victor had seen this capacity before I fully named it. He had said in the middle years of our marriage that I had the rarest skill in hospitality, the ability to understand what a room was for before the room existed, to work backward from the emotional experience you want to produce to the physical and logistical decisions that produce it. Victor died in 2009. He was 62 years old, and he died the way strong men sometimes die, quickly, without warning of a cardiac event that was not on the list of things we were worried about. The death reorganized everything, not the company, which was already established and which continued under my management. The death did not change the company's operations in any material way. The death reorganized the private architecture of my life, the internal structure of motivation and direction that marriage provides and that his absence removed. I had spent the years since 2009 in the specific relationship with the work that grief sometimes produces in people who have built something they love. A deepened investment, a narrowing of focus, the company becoming the primary thing in a way that it had not been when there was a marriage alongside it. This is not a criticism of the work. The work is what I love. It is also the honest account of what the years since Victor's death have been. The Grand Pavilion was Victor's idea. He had seen the former hotel, the Commodore, which had been a landmark in the city's downtown for 60 years and which had been closed since 2004, and had said that the building's bones were extraordinary and that the right use of them would be something significant. He had not lived to see the renovation completed. The building opened in 2007, 2 years before his death, and he had attended the opening gala in his chair. He was already ill by 2007, though we did not yet know what the illness was, and he had looked at the room and said, "You did exactly, Loma said, you did exactly. You did it exactly right, Eleanor. I had done it exactly right." The Lafayette Hall, which is the Grand Pavilion's largest ballroom, has 14-foot ceilings with the original plasterwork that the Commodore's architect had commissioned in 1929. The floor is the original parquet, restored at significant expense. The lighting was designed by a theatrical lighting consultant whose work I had seen at a gala in New York and had pursued specifically for this project. The room is the finest event space in the city because we built it to be the finest event space in the city, and the building is the expression of everything Victor and I had understood about what a room should do. My son had booked this room for his wedding and had given me an envelope and told me not to come. My son, Vincent Dupont-Chen, is 36 years old. He works in commercial finance, which he is good at in the specific sense of being able to understand the financial structures of deals and to communicate that understanding persuasively to the people whose investment he is seeking. He is charming in the way of men who have learned that charm is a professional instrument and who have applied the learning diligently. I want to be honest about Vincent because the honest account of him is more complex than the story might suggest. He is not a bad person. He is a person who has organized his ambitions around social position in a way that has, over the course of the 36 years I have known him, produced a specific relationship to the people in his life. They are assessed for their utility to his position, and the assessment is not always visible to him as an assessment. He believes he loves Priscilla, and I believe he does love Priscilla, in the way that a man can love a woman who is also the answer to his aspirations. He was in his youth the child who noticed things about status and position that other children did not notice. He noticed which families in the neighborhood had newer cars and which had older ones, and the noticing was not envy. It was categorization, the same faculty that became useful in his commercial finance career, and that is in the professional finance career. Context, a genuine skill. The problem is not the faculty. The problem is its application, the extension of the professional categorization into the personal domain, where the categories are different and the costs of getting them wrong are different. He has also, I am honest about this, been shaped by the specific dynamic of having a mother who was successful in business while his father was alive, and who became more consumed by the business after his father died. The years after Victor's death were the years when Vincent was in his mid-20s and establishing himself, and in those years my attention was most heavily directed toward the company's expansion, the Grand Pavilion renovation, the second property, the catering operation, and least directed toward the relationship with my adult son that those years required. I say this not to excuse what he said to me in my kitchen. What he said to me in my kitchen was not something I deserved regardless of any history between us. I say it because the honest account requires the context, and the context is mine to hold as well as his. Priscilla Ashworth is 28 years old. She is the daughter of Robert Ashworth, who made his first million before 30 in commercial real estate, and who has made several more millions since, and of Diana Ashworth, who has the specific quality of the very wealthy who have been wealthy for long enough that the wealth is simply the background of their existence rather than a subject of pride or anxiety. Priscilla herself works in art curation, which is what the children of people like her parents sometimes do. Work that is genuine and that exists at the intersection of the valuable and the beautiful, in a world where the economic pressure that makes most people's work urgent is absent. I had met Priscilla once before the wedding conversation. Vincent had brought her to a dinner at my house in the spring, and she had been in the specific way of people who have been raised to be impeccably mannered, exactly appropriate. She had complimented the meal. She had asked intelligent questions. She had done everything correctly. She had also, I observed with the professional attention of someone who has spent 31 years reading rooms, and the people in them looked around my house with a certain quality of assessment. Not unkind, but calibrating. The calibrating was not Priscilla's fault. The calibrating was the natural response of someone who has been raised in a world where things have specific values, and who evaluates new environments in those terms. My house is a comfortable house. It is the house Victor and I built a life in, and it is furnished with the specific accumulated quality of a life, rather than the designed quality of a presentation. It is not the house that the Ashworths live in, or that Priscilla is accustomed to. I thought about all of this in the days after Vincent's kitchen visit, and the thinking produced the specific clarity that difficult situations sometimes produce when you give them enough time and enough honesty. I understood what had happened, and enough honesty, why, and I understood what I was going to do about it. I did not call Vincent after the kitchen visit. I did not call to say I would not come, and I did not call to say I would come, and I did not call to discuss the envelope, which I had put in the drawer of my desk in the study. I let the weeks pass in the way of someone who is occupied, which I was. I had a company to run, and the 3 weeks between the kitchen visit and the wedding day were active weeks with 2 major events at the Grand Pavilion and the contract negotiations for the 4th property that I had been developing. What I also did in the 3 weeks was think. The thinking produced a conclusion that was not entirely without precedent in the business world, but that was unusual in the context of a family situation. I was the owner of the property where the wedding was to be held, and the contract for the Vincent DuPont Chen wedding reception had been signed by my general manager, Peter Huang, on behalf of the DuPont Chen Hospitality Group. The contract was valid, and the deposit had been paid. The question was, what were the grounds on which a valid contract could be terminated? Our contracts contain a morality clause. This is not unusual in event venue contracts. Many venues include clauses that allow them to refuse or terminate service when the client's behavior or character is found to be inconsistent with the venue standards. The specific language in the DuPont Chen contract reads, "The Grand Pavilion reserves the right to refuse or terminate service to any client who, in the sole judgment of DuPont Chen Hospitality Group's management, has demonstrated conduct inconsistent with the values of dignity, respect, and integrity that the Grand Pavilion upholds, what the morality clause requires, what separates its use from an arbitrary cancellation, is a genuine judgment. The values it names are not decorative. Dignity, respect, integrity. These are the principles that every event we host is organized around. A bride deserves dignity on her wedding day. The guests deserve the respect of a host who has treated his family with respect. The event's integrity depends on the character of the person at its center. A man who gives his mother $500 and tells her to disappear does not embody these values. The judgment is clear. I had written this clause in 2009, the year of Victor's death, during a revision of our standard contracts, prompted by a situation that had arisen with a client whose behavior at an event had been embarrassing for all parties. The clause had been used twice in 16 years. Once when a client's pre-event conduct became newsworthy for reasons that would have reflected poorly on the venue, and once when a client attempted to bring unauthorized vendors into the space in a violation of the agreement. The clause required the sole judgment of management. Management in the DuPont Chen Hospitality Group means me. I am the chairwoman. The judgment is mine. I called Peter Huang on the Monday of the week before the wedding. I told him what I needed him to do. Peter, who has been my general manager for 11 years and who has the specific quality of a professional who serves his employer's direction without requiring the reasons for every direction, listened carefully and said he would handle it. He also said, "Eleanor, this is your son." "I know," I said. "What do you need me to prepare?" he said. I told him. He prepared it. I had one other arrangement to make, which was the arrangement that was most important to me personally. I called Diana Ashworth. Diana Ashworth answered her phone with the unhurried quality of someone who is never rushed and who does not perform hurriedness as a status signal. She had been a client of the Grand Pavilion for the Ashworth Foundation's annual gala 3 years running, and the relationship was professional and cordial. I told her who I was. I said, "Mrs. Ashworth, I am Eleanor DuPont Chen. I am the owner of the Grand Pavilion. I am also Vincent's mother." I paused. "I wanted to have a conversation with you before the wedding day about something you should know." There was a silence. Then Diana Ashworth said, "I see." She said it with the specific quality of someone who is gathering information without committing to a response until she has more. "Tell me what I should know," I told her. I told Diana Ashworth 2 things. The first thing I told her was what Vincent had said to me in the kitchen. The precise words, as closely as I could reproduce them, that I was unsophisticated, that Priscilla's family expected a certain world, that I would be uncomfortable, should not attend. I told her about the envelope. I told her the amount that was in it, because the amount is relevant to understanding what was being communicated. It was $500. This is the amount that someone gives when they want to make the giving look generous, without actually being generous, when the gesture of the envelope matters more than the content. $500 is a weekend hotel room and some meals. It is not a meaningful gesture to a mother who has been told she is too embarrassing to attend her son's wedding. I told her something else. I told her that I was not calling as an injured mother seeking sympathy. I was calling as the owner of a business that she and her family had contracted with, and as someone who believed that the people she trusted with the care of her daughter's most significant day should be known to her. I told her that the Grand Pavilion's values, the values we had built the business on, the values that were in our marketing and our mission statement, and as it turned out in our contract's morality clause, were values about dignity and respect. I told her that the client who had booked our most important room for his most important day had demonstrated a failure of both. Diana Ashworth listened to this without interrupting. When I finished describing the kitchen visit, there was a silence of approximately 10 seconds. Then she said, The second thing I told her was that I was the chairwoman of the DuPont-Chen Hospitality Group and the owner of the Grand Pavilion, and that the reception she and her daughter and my son had booked was at my property, and that I had a decision to make about what happened on the 14th, she said. What decision? The contract has a morality clause, I said. It gives me the right to terminate service when the client's conduct is inconsistent with the values the Grand Pavilion upholds, and you believe Vincent's conduct qualifies, she said. I wanted you to know, I said, before the 14th, because the decision affects you and your daughter, and you deserve to have the information and the time to make your own choices. Another silence. Then what is it you want from this conversation, Mrs. Dupont-Chen? This was the direct question that the conversation had been leading to, and I had thought about the answer across the 3 weeks. I want to be honest with you, I said, about who your daughter is marrying, not because I don't love my son. I do love him. But a mother who tells you her son has integrity when he has just sent his mother away from his wedding with $500 is not being honest with you. I am being honest. Diana Ashworth was quiet for a long time. And the venue, she said, the Grand Pavilion. You're going to be there on the 14th? Yes, I said. In what capacity? She said. As the chairwoman of the board, I said, which is what I am every day of the week, including the 14th. The silence that followed was the silence of someone who is making a decision. Mrs. Dupont-Chen, she said finally, thank you for calling me. I think the 14th will be a clarifying day. Yes, I said, I believe it will. We ended the call. I sat with what I had done for a while, because what I had done was significant and required the sitting. I had told my son's future mother-in-law what my son had done. I had given her the information she needed to make an informed assessment of the man her daughter was marrying. I had not told her what to do with the information. What she did with it was her decision. I had made mine. I was at the Grand Pavilion by 9 in the morning. The setup crew had been there since 7. The floral arrangements, the table settings, the bar installation, the audio-visual equipment for the reception's entertainment program. Peter Huang was in his office by the time I arrived, and we met for 30 minutes to review the day's plan. Peter is a precise man. He had prepared everything I had asked for. The formal letter of contract termination, drafted by our attorney, citing the morality clause and the specific conduct that triggered it. The documentation of the kitchen visit, which I had given him in a written summary, and the refund arrangements, which I had decided would be full and immediate. The deposit returned, any prepayments returned, nothing withheld. I want to say something about the refund arrangements, because the decision about them reflects something important. I could have kept the deposit. Our contract allows us to retain the deposit in cases where we exercise the morality clause termination, because the financial risk to us from late cancellation is real. I chose not to. I chose to return everything because the point I was making was not about money. The point was about what the room was for, and who was worthy of it. And retaining the deposit would have made the cancellation look punitive rather than principled. Principled does not retain the money. Principled returns it and declines to do business. The guests will be arriving from 6, Peter said. Yes, I said, I want to be in the Lafayette Hall before the first guests arrive. And the setup, he said. We've completed the setup as contracted. The room is... He paused. It's beautiful, Eleanor. Good, I said. Are you going to let it be used? He said. I thought about this. The room prepared for a wedding reception, with the flowers and the table settings, and the lighting that made the Lafayette Hall what it was. Not a financial loss because we would be refunding everything, but the aesthetic loss of a beautiful room prepared for a celebration that would not happen. Let's see how the conversation goes, I said. I spent the morning in my office working. At noon, I had lunch with Peter in the conference room. At 3, I changed. I keep a set of clothes in my office for the occasions when I need to transition from working hours to event hours. And the clothes I had selected for the 14th were the clothes of a chairwoman attending a significant event. A deep blue suit, tailored, that I had bought in the spring, specifically because I had known, since the kitchen visit, that I would be wearing it today. Victor had given me the pearl earrings I was wearing. He had given them to me for our 20th anniversary in 2004, and they are the specific kind of jewelry that says, "This is real quality, understated, owned by someone who does not need to announce the quality, because the quality speaks for itself." I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror at 3:30. I looked like what I was, a 64-year-old woman who owns one of the finest event properties in the city, who has been in the restaurant and hospitality business for 31 years, who understands every room she enters and who enters rooms correctly. I went to the Lafayette Hall. The reception began at 6. The guests arrived in the way that guests at significant weddings arrive. The first arrivals at 5:50, who are always the people most excited about being there. The main wave between 6 and 6:30, the fashionably late, who arrive admirably late, who arrive at 6:45 or 7, and who have calculated the lateness to communicate a specific social position. I stood in the Lafayette Hall as the chairwoman of the board, which is what I am in that building on any day I am in it. Peter had ensured that the staff knew I would be present, and in what capacity. The staff of the Grand Pavilion know who I am, and the knowledge is specific and earned. They work for me, and they have seen me in every room of this building, configuration of event, and they know how to read the room and the situation. Vincent arrived at 6:20 with Priscilla and her parents. He was dressed in what was clearly a significant suit, new, the specific quality of formal wear purchased for an occasion, rather than accumulated across years of wearing, and he had the expression of a man on what he clearly believed was the best day of his life. He had the specific glow of someone who has achieved something. He was greeting guests at the entrance to the Lafayette Hall when he saw me. The seeing happened in the specific sequence that things are seen when they are unexpected. First, the recognition. First, the recognition that there is a person. Then the identification of the person. Then the processing of what the person's presence mean. I watched all 3 stages on Vincent's face in the approximately 2 seconds between. "What are you doing here?" he said. He said it quietly, with the urgency of someone who has a problem and who is trying to address it without making it visible. "I'm here in my capacity as chairwoman of the board of the DuPont Chen Hospitality Group," I said, "which is the company that owns this building and this room." He stared at me. The staring had the quality of a man who is receiving information that is reorganizing his understanding of his situation, that he believed he had organized correctly. "This is the Grand Pavilion," he said. "Yes," I said, "it is." "The DuPont Chen," he stopped. "DuPont Chen Hospitality Group," I said. "Named for your father and me. Established 1993. Owner and operator of this property since 2007. I paused. "I have been the owner of this building for 16 years, Vincent. You booked your wedding reception here without knowing I owned it." He was very still. "I have a letter for you," I said. I produced the letter from the inside pocket of my suit jacket. "This is the formal notice of contract termination, citing the morality clause in your signed agreement with us. Our attorney has prepared it, and it is legally valid. The full deposit and all prepayments have been refunded as of this afternoon. He looked at the letter. He looked at me. The Lafayette Hall was filling with his guests and Priscilla's family behind him. "You're canceling the reception," he said. "I'm exercising a contractual right that exists in every contract this company signs," I said. "The morality clause? The client's conduct has been found inconsistent with the values of dignity, respect, and integrity that the Grand Pavilion upholds. The specific conduct is described in the letter." He said, "Mom, in front of everyone, you said I was unsophisticated," I said. "You said I would embarrass you. You gave me $500 and asked me to go away." I said it quietly for him, not for the room. "If I'm not worthy of attending your wedding, then this room is not worthy of hosting someone who treats his mother this way." The Ashworths had arrived while Vincent and I were talking. I had seen Robert Ashworth come in at 6:25 with Diana and Priscilla. Diana had looked at me from across the room when she entered. The look of someone who had been in conversation with me and who was now in the room with the subject of that conversation and who was calibrating her response. Priscilla had looked at the room in the way that a young woman looks at a room that has been designed for her wedding, with the specific luminous attention of someone who is receiving something beautiful and who knows it. When Vincent's voice had risen slightly, not enough for most guests to hear clearly, but enough for the people nearest the entrance to register that something was happening. Robert Ashworth moved toward us. He is the kind of man who moves toward things rather than away from them, which is consistent with what I know of how he built his business. "Eleanor DuPont Chen," he said, extending his hand. "Robert Ashworth." He said it in the way of someone who has done his research in the preceding 2 weeks, which I suspected Diana had shared with him. "Robert," I said, "congratulations on your daughter's wedding." He looked at the letter in Vincent's hand. He looked at me. He said, "Can you give us a few minutes in the anteroom?" We went to the anteroom. Robert, Diana, Priscilla, Vincent, and I. Peter Huang joined us from his position near the door, because Peter understands when his presence is useful. In the anteroom, Robert Ashworth said to Vincent, "Your mother owns this building." "I didn't know," Vincent said. "He didn't know the building's name meant my name," I said. "He knows now." Priscilla was looking at me with the specific quality of a young woman who has encountered a situation she did not anticipate, and who is processing it with more intelligence than the situation's drama might suggest. She said, "Mrs. DuPont Chen." "What did Vincent do?" I told her. I told it the same way I had told Diana on the phone. The kitchen, the words, the envelope, the amount. I told it without performance, not with the emotional drama of an injured mother, but with the factual directness of someone presenting information. When I finished, Priscilla was quiet for a moment. Then she said to Vincent, "Is that true?" Vincent said, "Priscilla, is that true?" she said again. The second asking had a different quality from the first. It was not asking for confirmation of fact. It was asking for the character behind the fact. He said, "I thought it would be better for you. Your family's expectations, my family's expectations." Priscilla said, "Don't include men who pay their mothers to stay away from their weddings." She looked at Diana. Diana looked at Robert. Robert Ashworth said, "Eleanor, is there a way to proceed?" I looked at him. He is a businessman, and the question was a businessman's question. The sunk cost of the preparation, the guests in the hall, the option structure. "That depends on Vincent," I said. Vincent looked at me for a long time. The anteroom was the anteroom of the Lafayette Hall, which is a room I had designed in 2007 with Victor's input, and it is paneled in cherry wood and has the quality of a room that is designed for important conversations. He said, "I was ashamed of you." The room was quiet. Robert and Diana Ashworth looked at me. Priscilla looked at Vincent. "I was ashamed," he said. "Not because you're—" He stopped. "Because I wanted this to be something specific. I wanted them to see me as a certain kind of person, and I thought you would make it harder to be seen that way." And instead I said, "Here we are." He looked at the floor. "Yes," he said. "I have been the owner of this building for 16 years," I said. "I built it with your father. I've hosted the Ashworth Foundation Gala here for 3 years. I've sat across tables with the people your wife's family knows, and I've done it correctly every time because I know how to be in rooms." I paused. "The person who doesn't know how to be in a room is the one who pays his mother to disappear," Priscilla said quietly. "Mom's right, Vincent." He looked up. "If you do that," Priscilla said, "to the person who loves you most in the world, if you pay someone who loves you to stay away from the most important day of your life, what does that say about who you are? And what does it say about who you'll be as my husband?" The quality of the silence was different from the previous silences. It was the silence of a moment that is determining something. "I'm sorry, Mom." I looked at him. "He is my son. He is 36 years old. And he is the person I raised, and the person whose flaws are partly mine to account for, and whose better qualities are also mine in some measure." The apology was the apology of a man who has understood something that cost him significant comfort to understand. "I know," I said. Robert Ashworth said. "Can we proceed with the evening?" I looked at Peter. Peter looked at me with the expression of someone who has been my general manager for 11 years, and who is waiting for the decision that only I can make. "Yes," I said. "The reception will proceed." I turned to Vincent. "You'll have a seat at my table. Your mother's table." He nodded. He looked like a man who has been reduced and rebuilt in the space of a conversation, which is exactly what had happened. The evening proceeded. "I want to tell you about the reception's quality because the quality is relevant. The Lafayette Hall at the Grand Pavilion on an evening when everything has been prepared correctly is one of the finest rooms in the city, and it was prepared correctly that evening. The flowers were white peonies and eucalyptus, arranged by the florist we have worked with for 8 years, and whose understanding of this room is specific and earned. The lighting was what I had specified in the event order, warm, diffused, the specific temperature and intensity that makes people in evening wear look their best. The dinner service was the service that the Grand Pavilion provides, precise, unobtrusive, each course arriving with the specific timing that makes a meal feel both unhurried and perfectly paced. I sat at the table that had been prepared for the primary family. Robert and Diana Ashworth were at my right. Vincent and Priscilla were across from me after the ceremony's completion at 7. They had married in the civil ceremony at the City Hall at 5, which is the sequence that many couples use when the reception is their primary celebration. The dinner was the dinner that the Grand Pavilion produces when the kitchen is properly briefed, and the service staff are in their best form, which they were. The kind of dinner where each course arrives with a quality that exceeds the previous course's already high standard, and where the service is invisible in the way that the best service is always invisible. Present when needed and absent when not, without the performance of presence that lesser service produces. I had overseen the briefing myself that morning, and the kitchen had produced exactly what the briefing described. The wines were chosen by our sommelier, who has been with us since the Caledonian Hall days, and who knows every significant table we host and what the table requires. He had chosen a Burgundy for the first course and a Barolo for the main that communicated to anyone who understood wine that the DuPont Chen Hospitality Group was not a company that made safe choices. Priscilla had come through the anteroom conversation with the specific quality of someone who has had something clarifying happen, and who is processing it without allowing the processing to take over the evening. She was present and warm, and exactly what the occasion required. She is, I concluded over the course of the evening, a woman of more character than I had assessed on the single dinner we had shared in the spring. Diana Ashworth said to me over the first course, "I'm glad you called." "So am I said. She said, "I knew it was the finest venue in the city. It opened 2 years before he died. She looked at me with the specific quality of warmth that loss produces between people who have each experienced loss. Her sister, I knew from our previous conversations about the foundation gala, had died 3 years ago. "I'm sorry," she said. "It was a good marriage," I said. "The building is the most visible part of what it produced." Robert Ashworth said, "Your son told us you were in the restaurant business. He didn't specify the scope." "He didn't know the scope," I said. "We didn't talk about the business very much. That was partly my failure as his mother." I said this honestly, which produced the specific quality of silence that honesty in a social setting produces when the honesty is unexpected. Robert said, "He knows now?" "Yes," I said. "He knows now." By 10 o'clock, the reception had become what good receptions become. The specific warmth of a gathering of people who are celebrating something and who have found, in the combination of good food and good wine and the beauty of a room that has been prepared correctly, the ease that celebrations require. Vincent danced with Priscilla. He danced with her with the specific unself-consciousness of a man who is genuinely happy and who has, for the time being, put down the careful performance of self that the earlier part of the evening had required. He is a good dancer. This is one of the things about him that has always been true and that I have always found pleasing. He moves well with the natural rhythm of someone who is comfortable in his body when he has stopped being anxious. He came to my table at 10:30 between songs. He sat in the chair beside me. "The room is beautiful," he said. "It is," I said. "I should have known," he said, "about the building, about what you'd built." "Yes," I said. "You should have known, and I should have made sure you knew. We both failed in that particular." He looked at his hands. "I was embarrassed to have a mother who worked in restaurants," he said. "Not because of who you are, because of what I had decided about myself and the kind of person I was going to be. The restaurants they felt like the old life. The one I was trying to get away from. The old life," I said, "bought your education and paid for your suits, and is the reason you have the professional confidence you walk into a room with. Because the confidence of someone who grew up watching their parents build something is different from the confidence of someone who grew up taking things for granted." He was quiet. "Your father used to say that," I said, "that the work ethic is the inheritance, that what we were giving you wasn't the money from the business. It was the understanding that work produces things and that the things have value because the work produced them." He said, "I forgot that." "Yes," I said. "I want to remember it," he said. He stayed at my table for 20 minutes. He told me about Priscilla, the specific version of her that he knew, not the public version, but the private one, the person she was in their apartment in the evenings when they were not performing anything. The private version was, as I had suspected from the anteroom conversation, a person of more substance than the social surface suggested. He thanked me for the reception, not for the room, for the evening, the specific quality of it, what it had produced in the conversation, and in the understanding it had left everyone with. "I don't want you to thank me," I said. "I want you to understand what happened today. You were wrong about who I am and where I belong. You were wrong about what your mother represents. The understanding matters more than the thanks." "I understand," he said. "Good," I said. "That's enough for tonight." It is 6 months after the wedding. The DuPont Chen Hospitality Group continues. The Grand Pavilion is booked through next year. The second and third properties are doing what they do. The fourth property, which opened in September, has been received by the market in the way I expected it to be received, with the recognition that comes when a product is genuinely good. Vincent and Priscilla live in the city. We have dinner together, the three of us, or sometimes four when Robert and Diana are in town, which is often enough to have become a regular occurrence. The dinners have the quality of dinners between people who know each other, who have been through something that made the knowing more complete, and who are building something from the other side of that completion. Priscilla has been to the Grand Pavilion twice since the wedding. Once for the Ashworth Foundation Gala, which her mother asked me to host again, and once for a smaller event that she was organizing through her work. Both times she moved through the building with the specific attention of someone who understands it now and who sees it differently for the understanding. Vincent has asked me twice about the business, about the history of it, how the properties were developed, what the expansion from the first restaurant to the event venue to the group had looked like from the inside. The asking is the asking of someone who is genuinely curious rather than performing curiosity, and the conversations it produces are the conversations that I had wanted to have with my son for a long time, and had not had because the opening for them had not been there. The opening is there now. The wedding created it. What do I know at 64, after the kitchen visit, and the 3 weeks, and the anteroom, and the evening, and the 6 months since? I know that rooms communicate. This is the foundational understanding of my professional life. A room is not a neutral container. A room is the expression of the values and the intention of the people who built it. And the people who enter the room receive those values and that intention, whether they are conscious of receiving them or not. I built the Lafayette Hall to communicate exactly what it communicates. The quality that comes from attention and investment. The beauty that comes from understanding what a space is for. My son did not know I had built the room. He will not forget it now. I know that being underestimated is only a disadvantage if you allow the estimator's view to become your own. Vincent had formed a view of me as the unsophisticated restaurant owner, and he had believed his view so thoroughly that he had not thought to ask what Dupont Chen meant. The name was his own name. The building was his mother's building. The room where he planned to perform the role of sophisticated man about town was the room his mother had built because she understood what rooms are for. Underestimation is not humiliation. It is information about the limits of the estimator. I know that the moment of recognition, the moment when what you actually are, becomes visible to someone who has categorized you incorrectly, is one of the most important moments in a relationship. The recognition requires the right circumstances. Creating the right circumstances required patience and preparation, and the specific quality of timing that I have been developing across 31 years of understanding how rooms work, and when the moment is right. I know that the envelope is still in my desk drawer. I did not return it to Vincent. I did not spend it. I keep it there as the specific material reminder of a moment that needs to remain legible, not as a grievance, because the grievance has been addressed, but as the documentation of what happened and what it produced. Victor would have enjoyed the evening. He would have enjoyed it in the specific way of a man who appreciates when a room does what it was built to do, and when the people in it find something true about themselves. He built the room with me. The room told the truth. I said to Vincent in the anteroom that if I was not worthy of attending his wedding, then the room was not worthy of hosting someone who treats his mother that way. The wedding produced something real. Both of those things are true. What is also true? I am 64 years old, and I have built 4 properties and a company that my son did not know I owned. And the sophistication that my son doubted is the sophistication that built the room he booked. The sophistication was always there. He did not look for it. He is looking now. The Lafayette Hall is booked for a reception next Saturday. I will be there. I am always there.